the world's biggest oil company. Did ExxonMobil pay a fee or a gratuity or corruption to a foreign country? We'll never know now, because the Congress has passed a regulation that required oil and gas companies to disclose any fees, any money that they have paid to a foreign government for the opportunity to extract oil or gas from their country. We happen to know that many of the countries in which these American oil and gas companies operate are rife with corruption. And so this is a way for us to do an anti-corruption program around the world that involves our national oil companies. That's on the way to being repealed. How about mentally ill people being able to get a firearm? I suspect 80% of Americans, maybe 100% of Americans, think that somebody that is seriously mentally ill ought not be able to get a firearm. Well, there's a mechanism. It's a national database. We call it the NIC database, and it is a database that gun shops have to inquire to see if an individual is on that database for domestic violence, for criminal activity, or for mental illness. We've had a problem with the mental illness part of this because many mentally ill people do not get on the database for a variety of reasons. The counties, the cities, the states don't provide that information. In some cases, it's deemed to be proprietary or confidential. But there is a way. It exists in the laws today, in the regulations today, that would require the Social Security Administration, when it makes a payment for disability for severe mental illness to an individual, that individual's name goes on this database, and when that individual may want to go down to the gun shop and buy a weapon, that the gun shop would query the database, and lo and behold, the individual comes up and he won't be able to get a gun. Makes sense. It enhances the database. It adds to the database individuals that are so severely mentally ill that they're able to get Social Security disability payments. Who's to object to that? Well, apparently a majority of the House of Representatives and the Senate does object to that, probably the National Rifle Association also. So now we have a situation in which we have a protection for Americans being protected from a mentally ill individual that could buy a gun or could not buy a gun, now suddenly being able to not be on the national database for those people that are mentally ill, and a protection. One more protection gone. There are others, and I'm going to run through them as quick as I can here. I don't know whether you believe in climate change, global warming. I certainly do. I've worked on this for more than 30 years now, and it is a real issue. And we know, no debate about this, that methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. And in fact, it's far more powerful than carbon dioxide. And so the emissions of methane are one of the things that we would want to reduce going into the atmosphere, to add to those elements in the atmosphere that creates global warming, climate change. Well, the House of Representatives has passed a resolution through the law that allows it to do so, to roll back a requirement that the Bureau of Land Management put in place that requires oil and gas companies that are drilling for oil, drilling for natural gas, that they control the leakage of methane from the gas well. Wow, that's a terrible thing to cause them to do. Really? To require that an oil company, that a drilling company that's going after natural gas on government, your land, the American public's land, that they, in the process of drilling for that natural gas or oil, that they control, capture the methane that would otherwise leak from that well. Well, that regulation is gone. The protections of Americans, gone. Greenhouse gas emissions emitted without regulatory control. And many of these gas wells are in communities and in neighbors who will also enjoy more methane emissions. One more, or maybe more. Oh, yes. Labor violations. Labor laws have been on the books for well over 80 years. And the labor laws are health and safety, worker safety, requirements on hours, working conditions, hazardous circumstances. There are many different regulations that affect employers. They have to provide a safe working environment for their workers. Some do. Well, I would say most work at making sure that their workplace is safe. Some do not. And some of those who do not provide a safe workplace have been fined by the federal government for those labor violations. That's a good thing. It causes those companies to provide a safe working environment for their employees. A regulation was put forward by the Obama administration that said that if a company wants to contract with the federal government, they must disclose their labor violations, where they have violated the various labor laws. It may be hours of work, overtime pay, working conditions, hazardous circumstances, safety. They'd have to disclose it. It didn't say they couldn't get a contract, but it did say that they would have to disclose to the public that they have not provided sufficient awareness of the various labor safety and workplace laws. That's on the way to being repealed. So what I want to do tonight is to simply say to the American public, pay attention. There are many, many things going on here in Congress and in the administration that are harmful to you, the American public. The kind of protections that you have counted on: worker safety, environmental protections, if you live downstream from a coal mining operation. Any of those things are in the process of being repealed, and your protections along with them. So be aware of what the new administration and the Congress is doing to you, not for you. I could talk about the wall, about the $15 to $30 billion that's going to be spent if Mr. Trump gets his way here and builds a 1,400-mile wall. And I want to just end with this, and that is choices. Your representatives, myself, 434 of my colleagues here, and 100 senators, and a president, we make choices about how your tax money is going to be spent. Should it be spent on a wall? Well, let's consider for a moment spending it on a wall. This is 15. This is the minimum amount of money, and it's not going to build much of the wall. But for $15 billion, what could you do for it? I'm from California. I was once a regent of the University of California and on the board for the California State University, so I'm familiar with this system. $15 billion could fund the entire California State University system for 3 years, and that is nearly 500,000 students. You could replace all of the water pipes in Flint, Michigan 270 times over for $15 billion. Choices. You want safe drinking water in Flint and other communities around the United States, or do you want a wall? You concerned about the American military, the Navy? 5 frigate-class submarines, Virginia-class submarines? or one Ford-class aircraft carrier plus a submarine? Or how about scholarships for undergraduate programs at the University of California, which I had the privilege of graduating from a few years ago? 27,777 four-year, full-time scholarships. That's the undergraduate population at the University of California, Davis, which I have the privilege of representing. There's one more place you could spend $15 billion, or even one part of $15 billion. And it's on this. No, that's water infrastructure. Where is it here? Well, I'm going to get it. Found it. Too many placards. Forgive me for a moment. These are the deadly diseases in America. Let's see, breast cancer. Over the last decade, we've seen breast cancer actually decline. Prostate cancer has declined by 11%, heart disease by 14%, stroke by 23%, HIV/AIDS by 52%. This one, Alzheimer's, has not declined. This one has increased by 471%, and it's going to go even more. What could we do with $15 billion of research on a disease that affects every American family? We could almost assuredly find a cure for Alzheimer's. I thank my colleagues here in the House of Representatives for increasing the budget for Alzheimer's research from around $500 million to just under $1 billion. That was done last year. If we can increase that funding another $1 billion a year, the researchers indicate to us that we have a high probability of delaying the onset of Alzheimer's by 5 years. And another $1 billion after that, we probably could find a cure for this disease that is going to bust the American bank. Medicare and Medicaid, that's where the big money is going to be spent. So my plea to our president and those who want to build a wall is, we have choices. You want to do something for the American public? Let's spend that $15 to $30 billion on education. You want to do something for every American family? Spend some portion of that $15 to $30 billion by doubling the amount of money that we're spending annually on Alzheimer's research. You want to do something for the security of our nation? Meet those critical needs that our military has. Whether it's a new submarine or an aircraft carrier, we can debate, but we do know that we have expenditures that are necessary in that area. So, Mr. President, don't waste our money. Don't waste our tax money on a wall. And by the way, we know Mexico's not going to pay for it. And don't get in a fight with our trading partner and our neighbors to the south and Australia. Be aware, Americans. Watch closely what's happening here in Washington. And if you're concerned, so am I. Concerned about where we're headed and about what this government is doing to you, not for you, but rather to you. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair and not to perceived viewing audience. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2017, the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designated